Hello guys, happy Tuesday. I'm going to wait just a minute and see if anybody is around. What time is it? 3 o'clock Central. Yeah, it should be a good time, I would think, for people, unless kids are getting out of school. That's a possibility. I'm about to head out to the store. I've been wanting to do this for a while now, and I'm excited. Today's the day. So let's just see. Let's see who's around. I'm going to wait just a minute. Yep, I'm set to public. So if you're just jumping on, say hello, hello. While I was setting up this video, I got a message from a friend in Puerto Rico saying that they had their powers knocked out from, let me see, from a 6.5 earthquake at 4 a.m. this morning. She said the source of the earthquake was the biggest power plant on the island, but I wonder if she means like that's where the epicenter was. I don't think she means it caused the earthquake, but I guess I don't know much about earthquakes here in Chicagoland, so possibly it was the source. I don't know. Anyway, she said they're safe and not in a tsunami zone, which tells me that other people maybe would be in a tsunami zone. I'm not sure. Hi, Rochelle. So, yeah, everybody should be lifting up Puerto Rico today. Very interesting. All right, well, I'm not sure who's around, who's not around, so people can rewind if they need to. If you're just jumping on, say hello, and let me know where you're watching from, please. My husband was healed of cancer years ago, 14 years ago now. He was diagnosed right after we got married. I've told that testimony a few times. I've told that testimony a few times. If you want to see it, it's on my blog, soulprosperity.me, or it is in my biblical healing group. If you're not in that group and you want to be a part of it, I would love to have you. So just say biblical healing and I'll make sure that I add you, or you can search for it on my timeline and add yourself. Anyway, during that process where the Lord was healing my husband, it was amazing. Miraculous, awesome, natural medicine, mushrooms. He used mushrooms mushrooms in the Maker's Diet to heal my husband. Anyway, on the Maker's Diet, you give up pretty much everything and you eat raw for like a few weeks, and then you're able to add little things back in. And at some point, he was able to add bread back in, but it had to be sourdough. And I remember I made a starter. Flour and water. I covered it in cheesecloth and I put it on the back deck until it could collect wild spores of yeast from the air and start to ferment and grow. And it was just such a cool process. And I remember just feeling like this is right, like God is so cool and he thought of everything. And, going to the store to grab Wonder Bread is just not this. Not that I would ever eat Wonder Bread, but you know what I mean? It was just very cool. I felt like, Laura Ingalls, Little House on the Prairie. It was just cool. So anyway, I haven't done it since then. I'm not much into maintenance. Like, I don't like taking care of pets. I have a hard time taking care of plants. Some of them I love. Like, I had a lemon tree that I loved. When we moved, hi, Johnny, hope you're well. When we moved, the lemon tree no longer liked its spot. It didn't have a good window and it died. I grew a bacopa. I don't know if you know what that is, but it has beautiful white flowers, tiny little white flowers, and it's trailing. And I grew the most beautiful big bacopa plant that like just sprawled all the way down. It sat on a chair in a big pot and it sprawled all the way to the floor. But those things are maintenance free. Anytime I ever try to grow a plant where I have to like think about it and take care of it, not so much. So the sourdough starter, you have to think about it and you have to take care of it normally. Like, first for the first 7 to 10 days, you're like feeding it and dumping it and measuring it and weighing it and adding to it, and you're taking care of it like it's a newborn sourdough starter. And then eventually you can put it in the fridge and you have to feed it once a week. That's still a lot for me. Treating a sourdough starter like a pet, it's a lot. I don't know about you guys. Anyway, I found, so there's 2 things. I'm going to read to you why it's better. and why, like, so right now we are, Johnny, you're the same, it's hilarious. I'm running to Trader Joe's or the local store and grabbing their sourdough. And Trader Joe's, I would say, is probably the most authentic that I can find around here. Very tangy, very, very sour, but it does have added yeast. It has instant yeast added, and true sourdough does not, okay? So I've been wanting to do this. I've been thinking of this and thinking of this for a few weeks now. I want to make, we eat it all the time. We eat like a loaf a week. There's no reason that I should not be able to provide our own sourdough with a store and using, you know, an authentic yeast. So I Googled recipes last night, and first of all, I found that you can buy 140-year-old sourdough starters on eBay and Etsy, which I think is the coolest thing ever. These things have been fed for a couple of generations. They've been kept alive for a couple generations. How amazing is that? I thought, how are they shipping this goopy mess? No, evidently you're able to dry it and then you bring it back to life. So they ship it to you dry. It's been in these families forever. They ship it to you dry, and then you just bring it back to life with water and feeding. I think that's awesome. So, and it's cheap. It's like $3.50. So I was torn. Do I want to do that? Do I want like a 140-year-old sourdough starter, or do I want to just make my own from scratch like I've done in the past, you know? So I decided I was going to make my own. I may try the 140-year-old one in the future and just kind of see how the taste compares and that kind of thing. But anyway, this is the cool part. I found this recipe. I believe it was written by, I think it was written by the person who started La Brea Bread Company, but I'm not really sure. Her name's Catherine something. And it's flour and water and grapes. And I remember watching one time like these pizza makers. Oh, nice. Johnny, now's your chance. Go do it tonight with me. This authentic Italian pizza maker, and I remember them like making up the dough for their pizza crust, and they were sticking things in the dough and letting them ferment. And I remember like one batch had apples in it, one batch had a piece of purple cabbage in it, and the doughs take on just like the slightest different based on what thing was added to it while it fermented. And I thought, I want to do that, you know. So I'm like looking for apple sourdough and not finding anything. I finally found this recipe. It's so cool. It's just 2 cups of, well, it says bread flour. I've also read that, you know, different recipes use rye flour, pumpernickel flour, something like that, because the flora and stuff in it, there's more of it there's more opportunity for the yeast to grow, because those things haven't been stripped away like they have in all-purpose flour. So I may use the bread flour, but I think I'm going to add a little bit of wheat in it as well, because I have wheat. I might have rye too. So I'm going to just mix it up a little bit. But anyway, then it calls for 1/2 pound of grapes and 2.5 cups of unchlorinated water. The cool thing about this is that you do feed it for a couple of weeks, you know, like 10 to 12 days. But then once it's ready, you can let it sit in your fridge for 6 months without ever feeding it. Now, you wouldn't necessarily, like, why bother if you're going to do that? Because every time you want to bake from it, you feed it 3 days before you're going to bake from it. And then you pull your starter, turn it into bread. But if you go on vacation or something, or you're not going to bake for 2 months, then it stays alive in your fridge. And I've not seen any other that could stay alive for months at a time like that. And this one does. So I'm so excited. Let me read to you why sourdough is better. If you have gluten sensitivities, you're going to want to hear this. And then I'll give you the ingredients one more time, and then you're going to need some kind of jar. You can use a bowl with saran wrap, but that's not as pretty and not as convenient. So you're going to need some kind of jar, and I'll give you all the ingredients. But here's why sourdough is healthier. So, okay, the nutrition composite of sourdough depends on the type of flour used. I'm reading from Healthline. Whether it's whole grain or refined, and obviously we want to use non-GMO. If you're gluten sensitive, sourdough will help because of the fermentation process, but you can also use einkorn flour, E-I-N It's Korn. You can find it on Amazon. But here's the thing. Sourdough has some special properties that allow it to surpass the nutrition profile of most other types of bread. Although sourdough bread is often made from the same flour as other types of bread, the fermentation process improves its nutrition profile in several ways. For starters, whole grain breads contain a good amount of minerals, including potassium, phosphate, magnesium, and zinc. Unfortunately, now here's where sourdough thrives, or not thrives, surpasses the others. Let's see. I believe that'll cheer you up. What time? Okay, so Johnny, I'm going to go out and get my ingredients tonight, and then I'm just gonna make it up tomorrow, live like this. Maybe what is tomorrow? Wednesday? Let's say like noon. Okay, tune in and watch. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. Unfortunately, the absorption of these minerals is limited by the presence of phytic acid. This is normal breads, which is commonly referred to as phytate. Phytates are considered anti-nutrients because they bind the minerals, reducing your body's ability to absorb them. Interestingly, the lactic acid bacteria found in sourdough bread lowers the bread's pH, which helps degrade the phytates. This results in a bread that has a much lower phytate content than other types of breads. One study showed that sourdough fermentation may reduce the phytate content of bread by 24 to 50% more than conventional yeast fermentation. Lower phytate levels increase mineral absorption, which is one of the ways in which sourdough bread is more nutritious than conventional bread. Yay! All right. Moreover, studies show that the lactic acid bacteria present in sourdough bread have the ability to release antioxidants during sourdough fermentation. How cool is that? Johnny, I'm going to pray for you as well. You don't know, you said that would cheer you up, so something must be going on. Finally, sourdough's longer fermentation time helps improve the flavor and texture of whole grain bread. This may make people more likely to opt for a whole grain bread, thereby promoting a higher consumption of fiber and nutrient-rich breads. All right, now here's the clincher as well. Sourdough bread is often easier to digest than bread that's fermented with brewer's yeast. Researchers believe this could partly be due to the sourdough bread's prebiotic content and probiotic-like properties. Prebiotics are non-digestible fibers that feed the beneficial bacteria in your gut. If you're taking a probiotic and you're not eating prebiotics, or if your probiotic doesn't have prebiotics in it like mine does, then your probiotic's really doing nothing. It's just going to die off in your system too quickly. But the prebiotics will feed it and keep it alive so that it ferments in your digestive tract so that it actually does what it's supposed to do. So you need prebiotics. Regularly consuming both may help improve your gut, easing digestion. Sourdough fermentation may also degrade gluten to a greater extent than baker's yeast. Gluten is a type of protein found in certain grains. It can cause digestive problems in people who are sensitive or allergic to it. I don't necessarily think the gluten is the problem. I think that it's the chemicals and everything that's been done to the grain that causes the gluten protein to be a problem. But nonetheless, gluten tolerance varies from person to person. Some have no visible issues digesting gluten where it can cause stomach pain, bloating. Whereas it can cause stomach pain, bloating, diarrhea, or constipation in others. Sourdough bread's lower gluten content may make it easier to tolerate for individuals sensitive to gluten. Research has shown that the sourdough fermentation process may also improve the taste, texture, and nutrient availability of gluten-free bread. This makes gluten-free sourdough bread a possible option for gluten-sensitive people. However, keep in mind that sourdough fermentation does not degrade gluten completely. Sourdough bread containing wheat, barley, or rice should be avoided by people with gluten intolerance or celiac disease. But it does, if you're just kind of wanting to avoid gluten, but you can't resist bread, that would be me, then sourdough is the better option for you. Now here's another one. Here's another benefit. It may be better for blood sugar control. As you know, when you eat carbs and breads, your blood sugar spikes. When your blood sugar spikes, it triggers insulin resistance. That's when you then start to create and store fat. This is why carbs are such a big no-no. Sourdough bread may have a better effect on blood sugar and insulin levels than other types of bread, though the reason for this isn't yet fully understood. Researchers believe that sourdough fermentation may modify the structure of carb molecules. This reduces the bread's glycemic index and slows down the speed at which sugars enter the bloodstream. Sourdough does this. Brown seaweed also does this, and I actually have a brown seaweed supplement that if you're one who loves carbs but you're gaining weight or you're pre-diabetic or anything like that, or you don't ever want to get there and you want to stay healthy, my brown seaweed supplement is for you. It does this very thing. It reduces the bread's glycemic index and slows down the speed at which sugars enter the bloodstream, which means it's going to prevent that blood sugar spike and that insulin resistance and fat production and storage. The GI is a measure of how food affects blood sugar. Foods with a lower GI are less likely to produce a spike in blood sugar levels. In addition, the lactic acid bacteria found in the dough produce organic acids during fermentation. Some researchers believe these acids may help delay stomach emptying and prevent a spike in blood in a way very similar to vinegar. Plus, if it delays stomach emptying, you stay full for longer. The sourdough fermentation process is often used to make rye breads, as rye does not contain enough gluten for baker's yeast to work effectively. One study showed that participants who consumed rye bread had a lower spike in insulin levels than those given the same amount of conventional wheat bread. In addition, several studies compared participants' glucose response after eating sourdough bread and bread fermented with baker's yeast. Overall, participants who ate the sourdough bread had lower blood sugar and insulin levels than those who ate the breads fermented with traditional baker's yeast. Amazing! All right, that's it. Then it just gives directions for the bread. So here's what you need. 2.5 cups, 2 cups. 2 cups of bread flour. Like I said, I'm going to add in some whole wheat or some rye or maybe both, depending on what I have in my cabinet. And then 1/2 pound of red organic grapes. They got to be organic because you're not going to wash them, and you're not going to wash them because we want the elements that they were grown in on them. That's going to help the fermentation process. And then 2.5 cups of unchlorinated water. If your tap water is not highly treated, that's fine. Otherwise, maybe get some distilled or something. Hi, Terry and Don and Holly. How is everybody today? That's it. And then we will do it together tomorrow. Oh, and you need cheesecloth. Cheesecloth, because that's what you're going to tie the grapes in. You don't want them floating around in the dough, because at some point during this process where you're making your starter in the first 10 to 12 days or whatever, you're going to remove the grapes and throw them away. Squeeze them and then throw them away. So make sure you have cheesecloth. And that's it. Let's see. Cover tightly with a lid or plastic wrap, secured with a rubber band for the first 6 days. So I'm going to go ahead and get myself a nice big jar. All right, then I will see you tomorrow. Johnny, I will see you tomorrow for sure. Anybody else? Tomorrow, hopefully noon-ish Central Time? Maybe. This is going to be fun. It's not Catherine. I said Catherine. I was wrong. It's Nancy Silverton's. Nancy Silverton's Grape Sourdough Starter. There you go. All right, guys. God bless, and may you be in health and prosper even as your soul prospers. Bye.